Okay, we doing it. We out here. And last thing I gotta do, close this, go back here, and voila. All right, y'all. So again, just wanted to kind of give somewhat of a quick kind of dialogue on just like some tips and strategies that I take if I were y'all and I just finished a class, a boot camp, a college career, I just graduated or whatever, and I'm looking for jobs, right? And I'm gonna kind of focus this in mostly for the full stack folks that have probably been, keeping up with me for a minute. But this is definitely kind of, I guess, advice that I would say is transferable across the stack. If you're doing mobile, if you're doing if you're just doing like very specific stuff in a very specific stack. Some of this might be very similar tips that you might want to use in order to get yourself to that next point in finding a job and preparing for a job, right? And so if you're watching this, you probably are at a point now where like you realize that there's you have certain skills in the tech space and you're trying to figure out what happens next, right? Like, okay, like how do I get an internship, or how do I get a job, or what do I do to keep learning after all of this stuff that I've been doing? And those are all really great questions to have. And, the reality is that there's not an easy answer. I think that oftentimes people get stuck because those answers are kind of hard to define all at once, right? The reality of everything is that getting a job in technology isn't as easy as people will lead you on to believe, right? Like everyone tells you like, oh, go to this boot camp and you're going to get a job, or, hey, go to school, get a 4-year degree in computer science and you get a job. It's not, it's actually not that simple, right? And I'm sure many of y'all probably have had that experience. You could drop in the chat if you've had that experience where, folks have kind of, you felt one way and you started trying to do your job search and it didn't actually pan out as easily as you thought it was going to be. I know for me, like I definitely had that experience. And so these are kind of like things that I would do if I could do stuff over a bit and like kind of start back from, either finishing my boot camp, or like, just right out of school, trying to get into that state of mind and whatnot. So yeah, bet. So first thing is you gotta really understand that like your GitHub is super important. Like it's hella important. Like people might not really show you people might not really kind of give you that guidance. But it really is like the first thing that people look at to assess where you're at in your technology journey. So in order to kind of stand out, you got to make sure that your GitHub at least communicates a little bit more about like where you are in your journey in an efficient way. And so wanted to just quickly show you what I mean by that, and kind of maybe we can find some examples from like certain other folks here in GitHub and stuff. So we talked about Git and GitHub multiple times. And part of the thing about it is like, we use Git and GitHub as tools in our development process, right? So, as engineers, you probably are familiar with Git and GitHub. And if you're not, you want to definitely spend time getting familiar with those tools because they're part of your developer process and they're going to be part of your day-to-day workflow once you start working on more sophisticated projects. But outside of being just a tool, right, a utility that we use for engineering, we use GitHub also professionally and socially in ways that maybe aren't as clear to see, right, at first glance. But the biggest draw to like why people use GitHub for your professional outlook, right, is because you have a profile of technically different projects and stuff that you've been working on, right? On your profile, so I'll just went into my profile real quick. On your profile, you have a couple of key areas that I want y'all to focus on. First is like what repositories you have pinned into your profile. So you get the option to choose what repos first show up on your GitHub. And I would highly encourage y'all to take full advantage of that and customize your pins so that you're pinning repos that show off really who you are as an engineer and what you do well, right? And you know, most folks have projects here that like don't really make sense for the jobs that they're trying to apply for, because that's the only projects they have on GitHub, right? And GitHub will automatically kind of just put all your repos up here. So I chose very specifically for these 4 repos to be here. If I wanted to change it, I could customize the pins and change which ones I chose. So I only chose 4 because I felt like, you know, those 4 were helpful. I also pinned repos personally speaking for me. You know, I didn't do this because I was looking for a job. I did it for me to make it easier to find the repos that I wanted to find quickly. But it just so happens that like now, whenever someone goes to my repo or goes to my profile, excuse me, they see those same 4 repos that I've been working on pretty consistently. And so one other point kind of about these pinned repos too, is you can see each of these that I chose have like a little tagline at the bottom, right? Some like kind of brief description of like what's going on inside of the repo. And, you know, you probably could say just from looking at that, that's probably helpful to have, right? Because each time someone looks at this repo, they get a quick glance of what they're gonna see once they click inside of there, right? And so that is also super helpful. And I highly encourage y'all to take advantage of that aspect of writing your repos, which whenever you go to a specific repository that you've created, so here's the repository I created for Intro to Web Development course, right? The About section here on the side is where you can set that description, right? And that description is what would kind of show up underneath your repos inside of your profile and give people a good description. And then also you can tag different topics inside of there. So if somebody was searching by topic, they can find your repo even easier. So recruiters are definitely going to be looking at GitHub, looking at what topics and what kind of aspects of the stack you're using inside of your repositories. And if you click on like a repository that has actual code inside, right? Like it always kind of shows what languages are part of that repository, right? So GitHub is going to allow recruiters to see, oh, do you actually work with this language that you said that you work with? And that's why people are going to consistently let you know, like, oh, you know, your GitHub is super important. So in order to help yourself out in that aspect, right, you're going to want to make sure you have repositories that are strong and really show off who you are as an engineer, and projects that really show off like what you're capable of and what, you know, putting your best foot forward in a code-based sense. And so that kind of I'll talk a little bit more about that, like project related stuff in a second. And but I wanted to kind of just finish up talking about these big sections on GitHub. So you got on the left hand side, you got a profile picture area. You have like a little opportunity to write a short bio for yourself. You can add things like company if you work for one, location you're at, and all types of other little things. So look, I'm the type of person that believes that like, yo, you know, you want to put your best foot forward when you're applying for these things and give people the opportunity to relate to you more. And so if you think about it, right after you apply for a job, right, you go to their website, you find a thing, you apply for the role, and then you realize that, oh, okay, like I typed in all this stuff and sent them the application. Now they're telling me that they're going to get back to me after reviewing my application. The first thing they're going to do outside of looking at your resume is click on a link to your GitHub or look at something that you've added to your resume that shows your profile off. So technically this, or my LinkedIn page, and I'll talk about LinkedIn in a second, is the first thing that they're going to see after looking at my resume, which is all text, right? Your resume is just a bunch of words. You try to convince somebody with a bunch of words that like, yo, I could do this thing. And next they're going to come to your GitHub or probably your LinkedIn to see your prior experience as well, right? Mostly if you're in a tech-based job and you're applying for tech, they're going to look at your GitHub first. So I make that, I say that that to say, there's a reason why I put a profile picture, right? And put a profile picture of me looking happy, right? Because I want people to humanize me, right? I want them to know who's the person behind the code. Like, I'm not an anon like DJ creating like a bunch of random stuff that nobody needs to know who I am. This is actually a public page. It's there for a reason, and I want people to know like, hey, I'm a friendly person. I care about code, but I'm also probably seem pretty cool, like, and want like it would be a good fit for teams, right? And so also took full advantage of writing this little description of like who I am a little bit more, so that folks know that like you're going to be looking at code that shows off the fact that I care about education, I care about equity in tech, care about entrepreneurship. And most of the repos that I have on GitHub that are public, at least, are education-based repos, like me teaching, helping learners, doing some like creating some bigger coursework stuff that I'm using for classes I'm teaching, et cetera, et cetera. But if I was looking for a job, right, I might make sure that this blurb explains the things that I'm interested in terms of the stacks that I'm interested in, or like things I'm working on now, like curious about blah, blah, blah. Because those things are also things that make people excited to get to know you, but you also can personalize this a lot more to who you are and like the things that make you who you are, you know what I'm saying? And each approach is helpful, but take full advantage of the fact that they have that little tool and feature for you to add a little profile for yourself. Last big section on GitHub is clearly the contributions section. And, every day of the year, you have an opportunity to make a contribution to GitHub, which really is just you making a commit and pushing it somewhere onto GitHub to whatever repo. And it gives you some a kind of a green icon of like how much contributions you've made in that particular day, right? And so as you can see, like my thing is spread out across the year. I've made several commits across the year. It's not like the most filled in, but also isn't absent, right? If it shows that I've been consistent across the year with coding, and like that I'm actually like active, right? I'm not just saying I'm active and then there's no history to back it up. This is actual proof that I've been making changes to my repositories and really kind of actively working on stuff over the course of the year. And people look at this, right? Once you start interacting on GitHub, if you start contributing to projects that have pull requests and you're working with teams and stuff like that, there's a couple of different areas in which your contributions might be measured, right? So one of them is in commits, one of them is in code review. So if you're looking through other people's code and like giving suggestions on ways that they can improve that code and whatnot. Issues on GitHub, every GitHub repo allows you to define issues. So if you're like writing and taking care of issues for people and you're submitting pull requests, right? These are all areas that you can contribute. So people also look to see like in what ways are you contributing to code, right? Most of us are contributing commits, but if you're looking to apply to a job as more like, a mid-level or senior level dev, they would expect that your contributions are a little bit more well-rounded, right? Especially like at the mid and senior levels, they're looking to make sure that you know how to do code review, how to execute pull requests, stuff like that. If you're working on big projects, it's typical that you'll have more in a couple of these areas. Again, like most of my repos are just like readmes that I'm using over and over again and just adding changes to. And that's a strategy. If you want an easy way to make some commits, you can definitely leverage the fact that making a change to a README counts as a commit. So that's an easy way, like a super simple way to get your contributions up day to day, is have like a README that you're contributing to. And for some folks that end up like leveraging myself for coaching or for mentorship or stuff like that, I tell them that all the time, like, like start a repo that's just notes and research that you're doing, and every day contribute to that repo and say, hey, here's some new notes I found, or here's my summary of some drawing that I just learned and this new technology. And if you're making that contribution every day, well, by the end of the year, your whole thing is going to look green, and that's going to probably feel really good and help you out when people go to your profile to look at what you're capable of. There's also folks who make a script that hacks this and like just makes a contribution for them. Hey, all's fair in the game of making your contributions look green. If you make a little bot to do that, hey, that's something to tell an interviewer and in an interview, and maybe you get a laugh out of that, and people would support it. But yeah, so long story short, you want your GitHub to kind of serve as an extension of who you are and what you're interested in, development wise. There's a lot of different, if you go back a couple sessions of videos, I'll definitely probably talk about GitHub more as like a service, and like how you can use like the explore page to find other projects, and find people that you want to like follow that are interesting in your area of expertise, or just projects related to like the specific stack or particular frameworks that you're interested in. And if you're interested in making open source contributions, like how to find those projects, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much that you can do on GitHub. And, you know, the first step is to just make sure that you're active and looking at, you know, adding projects of your own and just checking out other people's projects as well. And, you know, a lot of people will tell me stories of how they got a job, you know, making friends with somebody that they were making changes on a GitHub repo for, right? And it's like, oh, we met through the GitHub issues that I was resolving and stuff like that. And that's a funny way to think about it, but like every engineer from most of these companies that you're trying to get a job at has a profile here. So you can realistically find projects and things that they're following and get in the mix that way too. So that's another way that you can network with folks as well. GitHub recently added a feature that lets you create also like a GitHub kind of profile page, like design it a little bit more specifically. I just kind of showed you the basic one as it kind of exists. I follow a lot of cool people on GitHub, and one really dope sister named, let's see if I can find her, named Monica. If I can find her in here, let's see, guys, that's gonna be hard. But I got a couple homies that have used GitHub, like basically made their own GitHub page. And in doing that, like they can customize like how their page looks with regards to style and stuff. And so that's just kind of like taking it to the next level. Let me see if I can find one and show y'all an example. Let's see, following. Oh, Monica Powell, my fault. Yeah, Monica's really cool. I follow her on GitHub and on LinkedIn. But you can see like this is a README file that she created that is able to like kind of be a little bit more of a stylistic resource that you can use to customize your GitHub profile page even more, right? So same kind of stuff like I was talking about, like you have repos that she has pinned up here, and then, you know, clearly she's making hella contributions every day of the year, right? And so this would be a great example of everything I was saying, like making a lot more commits, being a little bit more active, and yeah, she's somebody really cool in the community to know and to follow. And yeah, and I follow a lot of people like this on the community in GitHub, because when they update something and they add it to the feed, I get it right in the feed, and I can take a look at new projects and stuff that people are working on that are of interest. And so definitely a cool way to sauce up your GitHub real quick. And so that was tip number one: sauce up your GitHub. Make sure that when people go to your page, they're really excited about who you are, what you do, and they can tell that, hey, you're active here in this community, and you're ready. You're somebody that once we give you this job, you're going to be ready to make some commits and be in the mix with us and whatnot. Cool. Tip number two: finding a job, right? So say you're trying to get this job in New York, right? I just typed in Google and Brave in the search, web developer jobs, right, in New York, because I'm here in New York right now. And you get a couple sites. You get like Indeed, Glassdoor, maybe some LinkedIn's, yeah. And you know, any of them are fine, but go to one of those sites, right, and take a look at some of the job descriptions, right? There's always going to be a bunch of ads, but you could also just look for an example of a job that like fits kind of what you want. So I typed in web developer, but what if I was like just really interested in React, right? So I could type in React developer or something like that, and search for jobs in that area. So getting some stuff for front end, React JS developer here for this company. Let's see. And cool. So maybe this front end job at Adobe is something that I'd be interested in, right? So if I clicked in this job, right, first thing that I want to do is look at what are the skills that they're asking for, right? And, let's pretend I'm reading through this whole thing, but here they're telling me a little bit more of the stack, right? React, Next.js, Apollo client, TypeScript, GraphQL, Jest, Storybook, Framer motion type stuff. This is Adobe, so it makes sense that they would want a good amount of different front end tools, and then also a couple things related to like styling and design and stuff like that, and animations and things like that as well. Once you kind of see like what these like jobs are asking for, I like to keep a list of all of the skills, right? So GraphQL like comes up often depending on who you're applying, what job you're applying for, right? So I would keep a list of these different skills, and this is what I would use to start my studying process, right? Like if I wanted to like find out what I want to do next, right? Here's another job it says Python React developer at JP Morgan, right? So each full stack job, front end, web dev job will have a different set of stacks that they're using, right? So and clearly this one's using Python, but the other one was nowhere near using Python. But if I keep a list of all the skills that all these jobs that I'm finding are asking for, I can start choosing which skills across the stack do I care about learning and want to learn. And that's how I would prioritize what to focus my next couple of months doing, especially after a boot camp or after graduating or finishing a class in like something like web dev stuff, right? There's just so much to learn. There's still so much to do that it's kind of overwhelming to figure it out all at once. But my advice is do what you feel like is going to be a good move for you in terms of, tied to active jobs that you see, right? But also tied to skills that you actually care to have, right? And that you care to learn. Because if you do stuff that you don't care about, you're going to get burnt out, you know what I'm saying? But if you do stuff that you do care about, right, then oh, well, learning this stuff is actually interesting to me. I'm excited about that, right? The more robust a company's job description is, sometimes is a good indicator of how the job's going to be, but also at the same time, you got to take these job descriptions with a grain of salt because they're written by folks in like human resources and HR and stuff, and that are helping the company hire across the board, right? So those folks work with like the managers to figure out what are the jobs we need and what are the like skills you want, et cetera, et cetera. But not everybody that writes these job descriptions are actual tech people, right? They just get a list of things and then they put it up. So sometimes they're asking for unreasonable stuff, right? And y'all probably have seen that, like, oh, like 10 years of experience and this, that, and the third. Don't deny yourself the opportunity to just apply. You know what I'm saying? The worst that can happen is they say nah. The best that can happen is they say yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like there's literally no reason not to apply if you feel like you have the skills to match the work, right? So I like to spend a lot of time when I first start thinking about, okay, like I want to work on a new project, for instance, like maybe looking at a couple job descriptions to figure out what are some of the tools in the stack that people are looking for to hire. And like, that's how I would choose how I build my projects. Your projects, you want to have them kind of show your highest level of capability within your technology stack, right? So you want to make sure that you aren't just building the same thing over and over that other people are building. You want to build something that shows off like, hey, I'm thinking about this at a high level and across the stack. So looking at job descriptions is a really easy way. On Google, like if I did go to Google and I typed in React developer, let's see, React developer jobs or something like that. There's a bunch of jobs on Google, right? So like you can find a lot also just by Googling, using like the Google jobs section as well, right? I definitely recommend at least reading through a couple job descriptions and keeping a list of like places that have roles similar to what you want to do. And let's just kind of do a little test here. I'm wondering if it shows how many popped up. No, it doesn't show like the number, but like just like thinking about like React, right? If you're interested in React, there's definitely jobs for React, as you can see. People are still looking for folks with React experience. But there's definitely going to be a lot more jobs, especially if you're in a web dev context, if you just type in full stack developer stuff or full stack engineering jobs, because people are looking for developers across both the front and the back end. So if you're trying to diversify your job search, don't just apply for like one like thing. Don't just go Java jobs or React jobs. Like look for jobs that are kind of cross-functional. So like back-end developer jobs or full stack developer jobs, et cetera, right? Like where you'll maybe find a lot more opportunities. There's also a lot of jobs in cloud computing too, right? So if you like type in cloud computing jobs, you might find a lot of stuff in there too. Each of these things, right? No matter what role I was trying to go for, if I was trying to go for like a DevOps job right now, right? And I know like, okay, hey, you know, I see not a lot of people are looking for DevOps engineers, but I've never been a DevOps engineer. Like, how do I do this, right? Well, you know, a big thing you got to do is like one, like learn some of these skills yourself. Right. So here they're talking about, oh, you got to have a couple different programming languages in your belt, Python, Ruby, Java, JavaScript, whatever. And also it talks about stuff like automating cloud native technologies, deploying applications, provisioning infrastructure. Use this as your new syllabus. You know what I'm saying? Y'all are so used to going to like, especially at like college, like y'all are so used to someone telling you, here's what to study. And you kind of get reliant on that, right? But you have to take it full advantage of like all the resources out there for yourself to use to get yourself to the next level. Do not underestimate like the importance of Google and research for your own career, right? By looking up all of these things, you can use this as a baseline for studying the stuff you know you want to study in order to get to that next part of your career. And then, you know, it's the same thing we do all the time. YouTube videos, like blog articles, developer tutorials, all types of stuff, right? Getting a book, that's what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? Do what you got to do to learn the skills you need to then apply for as many jobs as you can. And this job at AWS, great. If you got a job doing DevOps at AWS, well, congratulations. You're doing technology at a leading technology company. And that's then the proof for yourself that you're meant for this world. Like you taught yourself skills that you didn't learn in school. People are looking for that. So that's another big tip here. It's like, don't underestimate the power of using these job descriptions as a means of like figuring out what to do next for your learning, right? It's not all about just going, finding a job description, applying. Like sometimes you do need to learn some new skills. Sometimes you do need to work on new projects, but where are you going to figure out what types of projects, what types of skills? Well, look at the job descriptions for the most part. Other than that, you know, like if you're not as, and I do this even though I'm not interested in a job. I work for myself. I'm not stressed out about a job, but I definitely spend a lot of time reading job descriptions to see what companies are looking for and what are like industry best practices and norms and stuff, especially in parts of the stack that I'm not as familiar with, right? If I was like, you know, security or cybersecurity and stuff like that, like it's helpful to read through job descriptions because they got a little bit more of those like core skills and fundamentals that everyone should know in order to apply and stuff like that. So yeah, don't underestimate the potential of using these job descriptions to guide your project development or guide your learning as you're applying. And also don't let yourself fall into the trap of thinking that you're not ready for a job just because the job description has something on there that you don't know, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Let's put it that way. And when it comes to applying for jobs, you have to apply to a lot before you get hit up by a little, right? So I've had students and former mentees who've had to apply to over 100 jobs just to get called back or emailed back from 10 of them. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the numbers game that you're playing when it comes to getting the role. And, you know, if nobody told you, I'm going to tell you this right now. So you're not, you're not surprised, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not as simple as it takes. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. And it's definitely one of the harder things to do. So, you know, kudos to everybody in the job search. And that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to give these little tips as well. Next point is LinkedIn, power LinkedIn. Like, yo, like everybody also, like, you know how GitHub is like kind of professional, like for developers. Well, GitHub also is LinkedIn is the professional equivalent of like what GitHub is for us as developers, right? So let me see if I can do this real quick for y'all. Man. Did I do it? Ooh. Okay, bet. So we in. So LinkedIn is mad important as well, right? Like, and if you don't have a LinkedIn page, I definitely encourage y'all to create a LinkedIn page for yourself. LinkedIn, basically professional social network. You can search for people based on like, you know, different roles that they work for, different like companies, stuff like that. And, you know, it's also a feed, so you can get a feed of posts from different people. If you're new on LinkedIn, right, you might be like, okay, well, what do I use LinkedIn for? Well, I also would highly encourage you to start using LinkedIn to kind of find and identify people who you want to network with, and people within your network currently that can help you expand your outreach to, you know, the people who you're trying to outreach to. So for y'all as new engineers, part of the reason why I was like, oh, work on projects, like, you know, getting groups, like stuff like that, so that y'all can meet each other, right? Why do you want to meet each other? Because you have no idea who you're talking to next to you in this class or in your boot camp or whatever, right? Like each person has their own network, and the network effect is by meeting, connecting with more people, you expose yourself to more opportunities and more things for yourself. So LinkedIn is a tremendous tool. They use it for all types of stuff, marketing, sales, all types of stuff. But if you are looking for jobs, well, guess what? Everybody that's able to hire you is on LinkedIn. Every single person that you're probably trying to look for to get a job from, like those recruiters are on LinkedIn, right? Those engineering managers are on LinkedIn, right? Like that's just how it is. At a certain level of leadership in an organization, you have to use LinkedIn, right? For most of y'all who are new engineers, that you could get away with not using LinkedIn for a little bit because you're focusing on coding and all of this and the third. But at a certain point, you're doing yourself a disservice by not being on LinkedIn and not trying to actively network with people who are former alumni of Lehman College or former alumni of whatever school you go to. Like that's the purpose of all of this stuff, right? That's why you work so hard. That's why you went to that boot camp or did this program or whatever, you know what I'm saying? To get that network. And as sad as it is to say this, hey, look, the tech sector is super nepotistic. You know what I'm saying? Like it's as much as it should just be about like what skills you have, it's also like hella about like who do you know? You know what I'm saying? And who can vouch for what you know. And so joining LinkedIn is a great way to like start building that network out. At a certain point on LinkedIn, it caps you at like 500 plus connections. So it doesn't really, it's not really, you don't really use LinkedIn to say, oh, you know, I'm connected to like this many thousands of people. You use LinkedIn to talk about, you use LinkedIn to show who you are professional, right? So you can, once you add at least 500 people, it just kind of stops at this 500 plus connections. Most people who use LinkedIn, their profile is up to 500 plus connections. So that's a good goal to strive toward, is try to connect with that many people. And it should be people you know, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to just connect to a bunch of random people, because you want people who are actually going to vouch for you. And if somebody reached out to them and said, hey, do you actually know this person? They can say, yeah, I do know them. And yeah, I'm very grateful to talk to you about that person, and paint you in the best of light. So avoid adding your enemies on LinkedIn. You know what I'm saying? If you're somebody that got beef, like don't add the ops on LinkedIn. Like I don't know if y'all need that. I don't know if that needed to be an unofficial tip, but like don't add your ops on LinkedIn. Like they will mess your stuff up. Point about LinkedIn, right? So like, say I was trying to get a job, right? And I know certain companies that I love, right? I'm like, oh my God, dream job, Spotify. I want to work at Spotify. oh my God, if I got a job at Spotify, everything in my life would be sorted out. which is how a lot of us feel, right? It's like, oh, if I got that job at XYZ company, you know what I'm saying? Like, my life would be much better, right? Well, we all have those companies. And even if it's not like your reach company, like Spotify, it might be a company that you really isn't as big, but is still something that you care about, right? You can use LinkedIn to see who works there and learn a little bit more about the jobs that they have as well, right? So the company page on LinkedIn is really important because you can see all types of jobs that they're looking for, as well as you can see the people who work there as well, right? And LinkedIn's tools are hella sophisticated. So look, Spotify, I got 9,994 employees on LinkedIn, right? If I wanted to get a little growth hack real quick, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I'll type in recruiter in here and see who's recruiting for Spotify. You know what I'm saying? And so, okay, 167 folks here that work in recruiting. Guess what? If I was able to talk to one of these people, you know what I'm saying? Like talk to one of these people, guess what? One conversation with one of these recruiters could be the thing that makes or breaks me getting a role, right? And that's important to know, right? And look at it like this. You're making their lives a little easier by reaching out, especially if you got all your stuff together. So let me say it this way. Don't blow an ask if you don't got your own stuff together. You know what I'm saying? Get your stuff together. Make sure you got your profile on GitHub looking saucy. You got your projects looking good because you looked at skills that you needed to look at and started working on projects and learning stuff that you knew you needed to learn. And once you know those things are there, and once you know you're ready to like go to the next step and apply, and you're ready, you've been practicing for interviews, all types of stuff. That's when you come here and do this networking stuff, and you say, hey, John A, you know what I'm saying? I saw you on LinkedIn. I noticed we had a couple shared connections. I'm actually looking to learn a little bit more about potentially working at Spotify, if you don't mind connecting. Don't steal the words of that I'm giving you, but hey, I'm trying to give y'all some sauce. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to drop some gems here. But in doing that, right now I got a dope connection. If I get a job there, great. If I don't, great. I still have a dope connection to somebody that works there. And maybe not this year, but maybe they're like, hey, Cam, guess what? We got some more jobs open next year. Like, you should apply. Cool. Great. That might be my way to get myself into that next position. LinkedIn, hella underrated tool for us as engineers. I think a lot of people, especially after college, you don't think about that, right? And if you think about, like, for most of the folks watching this, like, y'all all go to Lehman College, right? Lehman College has its own page on here. So like, you could definitely look and see like who's connected to this school that you know, right? And like, make sure that you're adding the people who impacted your life and like who are part of like your larger network. So start building your networks on LinkedIn and leveraging that network to help you find the people you need to connect to in order to get to where you need to go professionally. And that happens at every stage, whether you're entry level or senior level. Like, you're still going to do the same process over and over again. I lost track of how many tips those were. So I'm just going to say the next and last tip I got for y'all real quick is on the summer internships, Sean. Like, everybody's always like, oh, I don't know where to find summer internships. I literally just typed summer 2022 internships in GitHub. And guess what? Every other engineer, just like you, is looking to get a job as well. And some folks are so good-hearted that they put things up open source for everybody else to take a look at, right? So y'all might want to take a note of this GitHub repo and just go and look through like some of the internship opportunities that exist in different locations across the globe and for different companies, right? And so this repo is one of many that kind of list a couple different groups in their specific internship programs. If you don't find any on there that you like, you can always look up like undergrad internship or like undergrad like tech internship type thing, right? And see what comes up. You know what I'm saying? Like especially like for different companies offers different stuff. So I'm on Brave, so it's not gonna show me as many things because a lot of things got ads, and I'm not trying to look through those. But you can find internships just by searching for them. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of big companies have some undergraduate program or some like recent grad, internship programs, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just important to kind of just look at what all is out there. But don't underestimate GitHub also for stuff like this. Like people have compiled lists for like internships. Like if you were looking for like lists like related to like let's just do 2022 internships in here and see how many lists come up. So a couple different lists coming up, right, from different folks who have compiled that. But also, like, say you're like trying to do interview prep and you're like, dang, I gotta practice these JavaScript DSAs. Well, guess what? If you type JavaScript DSA in GitHub, you're gonna find mad repositories talking about JavaScript DSAs, right? And so people are out here really trying to connect and support one another in this very arduous process of trying to get a job, right? It's not easy. And just like beyond getting a job, right? Like I'm focusing this conversation so much on getting a job because a lot of y'all have talked to me. That's what your goal is, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to give y'all tips on like what I would advise folks to do if they were, trying to do that and as a mentee of mine or something like that. But just remember that the community is really the big value here. GitHub is a community. Your network on LinkedIn is community, right? And the more that you kind of recognize that and you treat it like that, the more it'll give to you, right? You don't want to go and just take and never give. Like that's the worst type of person to be in community. So keep in mind, like, be reciprocal. When you see resources, share those resources. That's a big reason why, I've been advocating for folks to connect and like meet each other and use the opportunity that these sessions presented for folks to get closer and like to leverage each other as a network. And that's a big reason why, I keep lines of communication open on LinkedIn, on Slack, on Discord. You know what I'm saying? People hit me wherever they can, and we, try to show love and try to support in all the ways that I can over the course of time. Let me answer this question in a second, but really last thing I want to say is, the job search process can be very frustrating. You know what I'm saying? Because you're really putting all your energy into something that may or may not pan out. And for the most part, it doesn't pan out because you send 100 applications and you only hear back from 10. And of the 10 you hear back from, you maybe only get one interview. You know what I'm saying? You may only get 3 interviews. That's the reality. And it can be very frustrating on your mental. And it can be very frustrating on your psyche. So my last big piece of advice is don't, almost like this, keep yourself focused on the bigger picture of what you're trying to do with your code and why you're trying to get this job or what you're trying to do in the tech space with that knowledge, and allow yourself to start doing those things now to supplement the time that you're spending applying for these jobs and going through all of these different processes and stuff. And there's a lot of moments where like you could get really like, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. You can get depressed over a lot of this stuff because you're putting all your faith into something, and it could be a really tough time. And so just remember, there's no one right path to getting a job in tech. You know what I'm saying? I went a couple years without having a stable paying job in tech, right? Like, and I was working a part-time job, I was bartending, I was doing all types of stuff. But all the while I was learning, I was researching, I was building projects, I was doing all types of stuff to just kind of keep my head in the game, and ended up learning React. That's how I learned React, was like, I was working at home and like just had some jobs to kind of like just make a couple $100 every so often. And a good friend like randomly hit me up and said, hey, I got an opportunity for somebody that knows React, and I know you don't know that, but do you think you could learn it? And I was like, hey, I guess. And I started learning it, and boom, like fast forward to here, like all of these things kind of converged in a way that made things a lot made things make sense at the end. But if you had asked me back then, like, what's my path, what's the journey I'm on, like, I couldn't even tell you. I was just on it, you know. So keep your head up even through the moments where things are getting frustrating and challenging, and just trust that brighter days are around the corner. And yeah, there's a better road ahead for you. So those are my tips that I have today. Drop some thumbs up if y'all really resonate with them. Hope they're helpful and that they're well received, because I'm really coming from the heart with a lot of them. And I see we got homie with a question. So man, go ahead, bro.
No, just point out. Can you hear me? First of all.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So to kind of take advantage of communities like NASB, if you guys know what it is, because my brother and a close friend of mine find jobs thanks to them, and that's because NASB helped them to get into contact with recruiters that were recruiting, but for a program that was like more for diversity recruiting, something like that. I don't know if I'm myself clear. You understand, right?
Yeah.
And to be always active, because I have in the other hand, I have friends who graduated from 2018, 2018, and they are not working in the industry. I have a friend now who's just a firefighter. Another one has graduated last year, can't even find a job now, and I participated to TTP. I don't know if you know what TTP is. The New York City.
A talent pipeline.
Exactly that one. They participated and they can still find a job. Even some of my brother's friends, I mean, they cannot find a jobs, and it's not like they didn't do the job. They did do the job. I mean, they studied late at night, and they were A students, but they can still find a job. So like, just putting a lot of effort into this, because don't think that your diploma will get you the job at all.
Yeah, big facts. I think like what you're talking about too is like another good tip is like there's hella communities that you can tap into that like can help leverage, like you can use for networking as well. There's like the National Society of Black Engineers. There's that, which is NSBE. There's SHEP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. There's like women in tech groups. There's all types of groups that you can join, and that's those groups are helpful because of that. You're getting networking, you're building your network, and you're finding people who can who will support you in those moments where things get really difficult. So definitely echo those sentiments, and things like, your schools have resources. If you go to a boot camp, they should have resources. And that's one thing to ask them, when you're applying, like, what resources do you have for new graduates, like or people who finish your program, right? Like, because a lot of people think that, oh, like just going to this boot camp is going to get me the job. But the reality is you could finish school, you could go to the boot camp, and you still be in the same position you would have been before you went to the boot camp. You got to really dedicate this time on your own to like building out like these areas that are going to be tied to your professional well-being. And so projects, building out your GitHub, showcasing yourself more online, folks in the engineering space. There's a lot of folks who use Medium to write articles. Writing articles is a big way to get exposure. Like, so Medium is a great platform to join if you are able to. Twitter, like most engineers spend time on Twitter. So if you did have to choose a social media platform to be on, I would recommend using Twitter. That's another good way to connect with people in a very low key and informal way. But yeah, there's just all types of ways to network and get your name out, but also connect with people who can do the same for you as well. And so being a part of these communities is important, because that's what gets you access to certain things that you alone don't have. So definitely want y'all to keep that in mind. But yeah, fam, appreciate y'all. That was really all I wanted to say on this tip. So I'm gonna stop the video. I'm gonna stop the live stream there. But happy to answer any questions for anybody that anybody still has. But yeah, this is just a couple quick tips on stuff to think about while you're finishing school, finishing a boot camp, and like just some next steps to focus on as you're trying to get yourself professionally ready for a job or just the next step of your career in general.